Welcome to the Coast to Coast podcast, brought to you by Play Picks and the Lines, coming to you from the West Coast. Josh Lander, joined by my guy Nate Weitzer on the East Coast. And we are looking at a Friday night slate, Nate, here with about 9 games on it. We're going to go ahead and take a look at that Lakers-Clippers showdown. I think the Lakers are technically home. Either way, they're playing in Staples Center, soon to be not the Staples Center, Crypto Arena, as we know. Make sure that you do like and subscribe to the page. Got a couple other videos up for you today, including that second version of that marquee matchup in the Warriors and the Suns, as well as our player props video. Nate does have his article up on playpicks.com as well with a few of those games and player props for you. And as always, if you do still need a FanDuel or a DraftKings account, head to fdpicks.com or dkpicks.com and find those listings in your area, such as what we've got for tonight. Nate, let's get into it.
Yeah, nice 9-game slate here. Some big injury news to monitor, starting with the Heat, who are +6 at Indiana. That's because they've ruled Jimmy Butler out again and lost Bam Adebayo for, it looks like, about a month with a thumb tear. Bad news there for Miami. The Cavs are +3.5 at the Wizards. The Wolves are +7 at the Nets, with Karl Anthony Towns questionable and Anthony Edwards looking to battle through the flu tonight. Sixers are +1.5 at the Hawks. As we know, Joel Embiid's still working his way back into shape. Magic are +2.5 at the Rockets, who have their 2 best players questionable, Porter Jr. and Wood. The Pelicans are +7.5 at the Mavericks. Celtics +8 at Jazz. They have ruled out Jaylen Brown tonight. The Suns are +7.5 at the Warriors. As we mentioned, they will be without Devin Booker again, hamstring injury there. And then the game that I would prefer to bet on, if picking anything tonight, Lakers -2 against the Clippers. You know, as we're doing show prep here, the total has risen from 215 to 219.5 as it keeps going up. So another situation where if you bet early, you got some great value. And if not, you might want to consider teasing that total down to get a more reasonable over, or maybe hedge with the under at this point. But either way, what I'm looking at, Josh, is just a straight up Lakers win. As we know, both teams have had their struggles this season, but the Clippers, aside from their 9-1 stretch in the middle of 2 just putrid stretches of basketball, they've been maybe one of the 3 worst teams in the Western Conference, and that includes a couple teams that aren't even trying to win. They haven't been able to cover in 4 straight conference games. They've lost 6 of their last 7 against the West. They've lost 6 of their last 8 overall, with their only wins against a struggling Mavericks squad and the lowly Pistons. Their defense has slowed down. They're giving up 108 points per game. We're allowing about 103 during that nice 9-1 stretch. They're suddenly 19th in field goal percentage allowed, 26th in offensive rating, pace, and 25th in net rating during that bad 8-game stretch. And they're going to be without Nick Batum tonight. Obviously, Kawhi Leonard is not playing this season, and this is the first time that they have to go across the locker room to play the Lakers since Kawhi came aboard without him. So obviously a huge hit there, especially as you try to guard LeBron James, who's both healthy and a little ticked off that he had to miss Tuesday's game because of a false positive COVID test. Extra rest for the King. We haven't seen player props come out because Anthony Davis is questionable with a wrist injury, but I think once LeBron's props are out, you would definitely look at some overs there. If he can find any motivation at this point in his career, he will do it. And look, the Lakers, they score a ton. They're up to 115.2 points per game with LeBron versus 108 without him. They're 7-4 with him versus 5-7 with a negative net rating without him. And surprisingly, their defense has been a little bit worse when he plays. So I think that's why we're seeing so much betting on the over, in addition to the fact that the Lakers have gone over in 6 of their last 7 home games. They're allowing a league-high 113 at Staples, and they're playing at the 3rd fastest pace at home. So, yeah, definitely a lot to indicate over here. But I think we do our play here where we hedge the bets in case the Lakers win kind of handily and just take their team total, because these Clippers, it's really a make-or-miss league for them. They're depending so much on Paul George and Reggie Jackson. They have no depth really in terms of scoring behind those guys. And I'd be a little scared of this Lakers defense, which is maybe starting to figure things out. Even without LeBron, they outscored the Kings 67-33 in the second half on Tuesday. So they have an extra day of rest here. versus the Clips. I would expect them to come out and play lights out defense, maybe for the first time all year for a full game. And that's how they're going to cover this little 2-point spread. And maybe you even think about getting some extra juice for them to cover more than just 2 points. I mean, I put in the article, bet it up to -3 at least for sure.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. Honestly, that alternate spread. This is a total misprint. When you said it was Lakers -2, I was like, hold on. It was like 2 hours ago that they were still like +1.5. It just keeps plummeting from that -3.5. It started for the Clippers, which was wild. There's just this weird sense of like, the Lakers aren't the Lakers. LeBron's done, da da da. Look. I'm not saying this is the same Lakers team that we saw, a couple seasons ago. I'm not saying, LeBron, they're not, especially because the only two really consistencies are LeBron and AD. But this is a Clippers team that I trust not at all. Right. And the Lakers, seem to have, to a degree sold out on defense, and started to decide that they're just going to go ahead and make sure that they score points, dropping like 110, at least 110 in their, I think 5 of their last 7 is what I'm looking at here. Putting up a ton of points all over the place, but also giving up a good amount of points. And that's not something that they need to worry about tonight in terms of giving up points to the Clippers. This offense is so bad, man. It's so tough to watch. And, it's not that much of a shock. Marcus Morris and Serge Ibaka just came back into the lineup. As you mentioned, when you have, one of the best offensive players in the league in Kawhi, not playing on your team and your roster is built for him and PG to be what you have, it's going to be that way all season, in my opinion, because it's really just Paul George and Reggie Jackson at this point for the Clippers. There's really nobody else putting up numbers. And that was the case even when they were winning. But as you mentioned, it just comes down to now, if you're not going to be this really tough-nosed defensive team that can put stops together, they're not able to score. And so, I lean I would want to take an over here. But as you mentioned, like, I can't trust the Clippers to get theirs. So it is seemingly like a play here where maybe, the Lakers are able to at least lock up a little bit more on defense here. And you take the Clippers under total because they're playing at home kind of, right? They're whatever the Staples Center is to them tonight. They're both playing in LA. So I'm not really looking at the splits too much. It's basically a home game for the Lakers, no matter who's technically the home team. And so, more importantly for me than those splits for either team is really just really the recent numbers that we see because of the fact that LeBron, when he's played in his last 3 games, he's averaging 34 points, 8 boards, and 5 assists, right? And so we know what we're going to get from him. It's another situation of I know what I'm going to get from LeBron, and that's the thing that I feel most comfortable betting on besides the Lakers winning. So I would be willing to take this at like Lakers -5, get about plus 200 on your money there, and then move forward with some LeBron props when we see those, especially if AD is out. Getting LeBron around 20, I'm assuming it's going to be close to over 25 points or so tonight. I would still feel pretty good about that without AD especially.
Yeah, it's interesting. I looked over a 46 game sample size because AD has missed a ton of games since the start of last season, and nothing really changes for the Lakers. I mean, because it's such a big sample size, they're used to playing without him, I guess, but the defense isn't any worse. The offense isn't any better with him. The pace doesn't even change. I don't know if he's an overrated defender at this point, but he's not having a good season. So that's right. For sure. And I would not consider, maybe you're even getting more value. Maybe that's the reason that it opened with Clippers -3 because of AD, but I think books are overvaluing his impact at this point. And with the Clippers, they're just such a streaky team. They have been since last season, but they're really, they're 3-7 against the spread after a loss. As I mentioned, those 2 long stretches of just terrible basketball. They're 1-5 against the spread when they have a rest disadvantage. And with an old team like the Lakers, you got to love them having a little bit of a rest advantage here, especially Bron, who didn't even play this week. And now he gets to go out against Marcus Morris, the self-proclaimed LeBron stopper who likes to run his mouth. And I think that's why we can feel really good about his props once they come out, looking for player performance doubles, for LeBron's production in a Lakers win. But I think it's just so simple here. You just hammer that line at -2 or 3, and probably we're going to see it close around -5, like you said.
Yeah, they have been. The sharps are moving money, right? There's big money moving and moving that line a ton. And we'll see LeBron at the 5 again tonight. To your point, AD on defense is nothing that anybody has really been too fond of this season on the Lakers side. And LeBron, it's going to really be him carrying this team on defense. Once again, it sucks for him that at his age he needs to go ahead and play that hard on defense like he does. But they're eking out these wins, and that's not going to help. So yeah, to your point, feeling good about the Lakers also because of that rest advantage, which they definitely need, especially with AD hobbled and that old LeBron King playing as hard as he is right now. So that is all the time we have for today. Nate, make sure y'all are liked and subscribed to that page, as we've got a couple other videos for you up today. And until we see you next, happy betting.